Hello, hello, hello. Wow. This month has gone by super fast, but in a good way because it has brought us together today in this moment. And I want to do my very, very best to welcome you to season 2 of Open Mic, Open Site. I am so glad that you're here with us today. My name is Kyla Williams Tate. I am the founder of the CollabARTive Community as well as the host of the Open Mic, Open Site podcast of sorts, if you will. So I want to start today by grounding us a bit in the space that has made this moment possible. And that's to talk about the collaborative community. So when we first started the collaborative community, that was last year, sometime in the spring. So, sometime last year, this time of year, we had some big goals. And for those who know me, you know I can vision and throw some big goals up on that whiteboard. And they were big, beautiful, necessary goals. But what we learned really quickly was that big goals takes a lot of things. Takes a lot of heads, takes a lot of hands, takes a lot of heart. And while many of those original ideas that we had for the collaborative community are still alive, they are still alive and hanging out on my strategic document, they're still relevant. We realize that they all can't be fully realized like immediately, which is okay. Like building towards something feels really assuring and valuable and rich. I like that. So we know that we need to have more capacity, more infrastructure, and certainly more investment because doing all of these artsy things costs a little bit of arts and money, right? And we want to make sure that we're able to do what we do and do it well. So what we've built for now is something really intentional and really manageable and really sustainable. And that still really holds the spirit of the collaborative community and why we all came together and why we thought being in a community with each other as artists, folks who are really pushing for equity and opportunity using digital tools and digital literacy. So that's all still there. But what we're going to function like, at least in the immediate, is like an after school drop in space for artists. Okay. So, like, no pressure, no membership, but just lots of opportunities to engage in programming, in collaboration, all of those kind of fun things that you used to do when you went to the after school programs at school. So, right now, we have two programs that we are primarily focused on this year. And one of them is where we are today for Open Mic, Open Site, and then our Artists on Demand program. So, for those who are new to the collaborative community and like, what is this girl talking about? She's just jumped on here talking all about the collaborative community. At its core, collaborative community is a collective of digital inclusion practitioners who happen to also be artists. We're expanding that a bit to be anyone who just wants folks to have equitable access to the internet and digital skills and confidence. You too are part of the community. And so we're bringing people together so that we can maintain our creative practices alongside our professional work because that tension, where sometimes you're not able to do your creative stuff because of work taking over your timeline and your energy level. This is like an intentional opportunity for us to presence that artistic and creative practice and to prioritize it because it's super duper important. And I know anytime that I engage in creative practice, it certainly makes me feel better. It's transformative to my spirit and it makes my work turn out better. Like I am a better me, I'm a better professional when I'm tapped into my creative space. So, we all know that the work that we do it in systems. And we also know that the work that we do is in spirit. And so they're not separate. Systems and spirit are not separate. And so this collaborative community is the opportunity for us to merge both system and spirit in an intentional way. So the members of the collaborative community, they span performing arts, literary arts, visual arts, mixed media, anything that you consider to be a creative practice, it counts. So folks are of different disciplines, different mediums, but we all have a shared commitment. We want to advance digital inclusion because it's important. We are not about leaving people behind, digitally speaking. We are about expanding access and whatever access means to you, and for building more equitable futures for the people that we are providing support and services to. And so, this space, Open Mic, Open Site, among the many other spaces that the collaborative community continues to occupy, really are spaces for connection, spaces for storytelling, and space for creative exchange. So, Open Mic, Open Site will continue to be a seasoned moment. We'll always be live the last Wednesday of every month, unless otherwise indicated. We run from April until October, so there's plenty of opportunity for us to feature new artists or some of our returning artists that are working on other things. Per usual, Open Mic, Open Site is a themed opportunity for engagement. So we have these themes that we've identified, and the artists that are selected to present and are highlighted during that month represent that theme, excuse me. And then the artist on demand is really embedding artists into strategic spaces, so meetings and gatherings where creativity can help to deepen how folks are thinking and engaging. Folks always reach out to me all the time and say, oh, do you know someone that could do this, or someone who could speak and bring art here? And so that artist on demand is still going to be an ad hoc feature of the collaborative community. And so if you are interested in being kind of in the core of folks to be considered for that, I would love to know you and add you to our cool after school art program called Collaborative Community. So I also want to spread some good news about what we've been working on. We're entering a new chapter. We have a fiscal agent over at the collaborative community, and we will be applying for some grants to help to sustain and grow this work because, again, there's a need for more things to happen, but we need a little bit of investment and support to ensure that those things go and happen well. And then also in this new season of Open Mic, Open Site, we are offering a small stipend to artists who appear. So last year, thank you to all the artists that appeared last year. Y'all was doing it out the goodness gracious of your heart, and we appreciate that. This year, you get your little bit of coinage, a little bit of coinage to put inside your pocket to help you with your creative practices, or buy yourself a little cup of coffee, whatever you need it for. So we're really excited to be able to do that because honoring creative labor matters. I will say that again. Honoring creative labor matters. So let's get into tonight's theme. It is something that's near and dear to my heart: origins. And this theme was deeply influenced by my experience attending the Black Information Futures Symposium at the University of Washington in Seattle. The symposium was created by Tracy D. Hall. And if you don't know about Tracy D. Hall, what you doing? Like, where you from? Like, where you at? Like, Tracy D. Hall is not just an amazing person, just like the embodiment of an amazing person, but she's done so much good for libraries, for schools, for archivists, like all the things. Tracy D. Hall is literally that girl, as the folks would say on social media. And so I don't use that word lightly. She has been such a transformative light in so many people's lives, and she brought us together in this space. And truth be told, y'all, when I was showing up at the Black Information Futures, I knew that something good was going to happen, but I did not know that what happened was going to happen. Being in that space, listening, witnessing, feeling, it really did shift something in me. So I wrote a 5-part series reflecting on that experience. And it was an auto ethnographic account. And it was like written from being within the room and within the work itself, tracing how my own understanding was evolving in real time. So it's a 5-part written series that I have on LinkedIn, but only 4 are published, because I'm still working on the 5th one, because there is some unfinished business that happened at Black Information Futures that I am still navigating through. And it is related to origins. And right now, I am on a mission to locate my grandparents in the archives. So I've only known one grandparent, that's my mother's mother, and I don't have much information about my maternal grandfather, my mother's father. And then on my father's side, excuse me, my grandfather passed away when my dad was 9. My grandmother passed away when my dad was 11. So what I have are more like fragments, a few photos, some pieces of memory, a lot of gaps. And so this question of origins, it's like not abstract to me. Like it's lived, it's really present. It's something that I'm actively sitting with, uh, because there really is a generational gap in information, like from my own life. And I'm trying to understand like what that means to come from something that I cannot fully trace. It is driving me up a wall. And I know many people who are listening and watching may have similar stories. So I'm holding space for that, and going to continue to push, and be able to hopefully share part 5 of that story soon. But what I will say is that throughout the symposium, there was incredible talks, presentations, laughter, tears, and such Black genius. My goodness, there was such Black genius in those rooms, just floating all up and through those buildings. And one of those moments came from our featured guest today, Daniel Gray-Kontar. So Daniel presented at the Black Information Futures Conference Symposium on the Black Home Space Theoretical Framework. It's a body of work that he has been developing over 3 decades. That's right, 3, 1, 2, 3 decades. And it's at the intersection of Black cultural memory, spatial justice, arts, and community development. And what struck me about Daniel's presentation was it wasn't just theory, right? It was storytelling, it was poetry, it was lived experience. And I'm a poet myself, and I wanted more. We only had a little bit of time for these talks, but I was like, more, more, more. I need more from Daniel and more from many others. So as I continue to reconcile my own origin story, I felt so inspired by Daniel's work, and this theme, Origins, was born. And then I realized that April was National Poetry Month, and both Daniel and I are poets. And it just felt not only appropriate, but just really divine. So tonight, we are doing something a little different. Instead of multiple artists, we have one voice, one presence, one offering. And I'm so honored that Daniel accepted the invitation. So let me tell you a little bit about Daniel. Daniel Gray-Kontar is a poet, recording artist, and civic architect whose 30-year practice merges art, spirit, and community development into a unified methodology he calls home spacing. He first emerged in the 1990s as the 1994 National Poetry Slam champion and co founder of Cleveland's Black Poetic Society, where he helped reshape American performance poetry by fusing Black cultural tradition, spirituality, and hip hop aesthetics. He was mentored by Amiri Baraka, Keith Gilliard, Julie Ezell Patton, and Abiodun Oyewole, and shaped further by writers including Thomas Sayers Ellis and Steve Cannon. His work appeared in landmark anthologies including Spirit and Flame and Bum Rush the Page. As the recording artist Rep Life, he spent 2 decades building sonic sanctuaries across over 40 international recordings, developing the laboratory where his Black home space theory took shape. Translating these practices into civic engagement, he served as the lead community engagement architect for Cleveland's $30 million East 66th Street redevelopment, founded by 12 literary arts, and has advised institutions from Stanford University to the Cleveland Museum of Art. He now resides in Indianapolis, where he continues to explore how Black communities build and sustain wealth against systemic constraint. So please join me in welcoming scholar, poet, archivist, and creator of the Home Space Theoretical Framework, Daniel Gray-Kontar.
Peace, peace, peace.
Peace to you, friend. My goodness. My
You.
goodness. I told the folks that we had someone heavy coming through to open mic, open site tonight. So I'm so excited that you are here with us and the folks are in for a treat. Now, Daniel, the stage is yours.
Thank you so much. Y'all, I want to start by, before I say anything, can we just breathe together for a minute? I don't know about y'all, but these days, my nervous system requires more regulation than I've experienced in a while. So it's 6 o'clock or 6:17 or 7:17, depending on where you be. It's been a long day full of opportunities and growth and challenge. And whoever is in the space, I just want to thank you for being here. But first, let's just take a minute to breathe. Just to be present in your body. So good evening, and again, thank you, Kyla, for that introduction and for building this space where poetry gets to breathe and where we get to breathe together. And thank you to everyone who is tuned in on LinkedIn or YouTube and joining us for season 2, the premiere of Open Mic, Open Site, built by our sister Dynamo, Kyla. So the theme is origins. And I can't think of a more necessary word for this moment. And I want to name something up front. I normally do this with slides. I'm a slide person. I build decks, y'all. But tonight, I just want us to be in community together in the tradition of the word. No screen between us except the one that you're already looking at. Just voice, just poems, silence that holds poems, because the oral tradition is an oral technology. It predates the slide deck by a few thousand years. So we're going to just flow. So with that, I want to take you on a journey through several things. Since I am the only speaker tonight, I have about 20 minutes. So first, poems, origin stories. Evidence of spiritual technology that's been operating for centuries, documents of how Black people in this country have always built interior worlds when the exterior one has always tried to unmake us. Second is a theory. I want to introduce you to what I call the Black home space. The Black home space is the noun. It's the thing carried. And the practice is the verb that I call home spacing. What it looks like when communities activate that inheritance that we've carried together. I've spent 30 years trying to name this, y'all. Third is a pilgrimage. I want to take you to a place in Georgia where sacred ground has been privatized. And what that tells us about archival alienation, about the severed circuit between collective memory and the geographies that hold it. And then last, I just want to leave you with a freedom dream. Something that I'm currently working on developing, becoming real in the ground in my hometown of Cleveland, Ohio. What up, Cleveland, if you're in the house? On a corridor called Buckeye. And this is where home spacing is in the process of being deployed as an archival practice, as origin, as community development strategy, as model for what a public library can be when it understands itself as a practitioner of sacred geography. So there's all of that. But we're going to start where all good things begin, and that's with poems. This first poem is called What Song Do? It's an origin poem in the most fundamental sense. It answers the question, where does our music come from? Where does the sound that saves us come from? It says it comes from what we were given. It comes from what we built from what we were given. It comes from the baked beats that we made out of madness. This is the Black home space made sonic. This poem is the music that mends our madness into memorials, the beats that notate the blueprint to our survival, our path to healing, our mothership connection to the world above and the love below. The sun loves me so much it made me black. The essence of me is a thank you to God. I remember when I was born, all 7 times. My story is in the blue notes. Negroes with no name serve my hunger swollen soul through cotton balls, corn liquor, and chitlins. Newborn notes flow through young thugs, Henny and blunt smoke. We too sing America, knowing its national anthem is code speak for our destruction. We chop its melody, create an 808 from its bass chords, screams from its strings. Lil Jon meets Lil Weezy on back streets. They sample alley cats and the banging of garbage can lids on their cell phones. Dump them into Renaissance dreams. Call up the Project Queen from 701B and give her voice freedom on a microphone wrapped in pantyhose, the color of her thick ass thighs, and that is our soul music. Day-night modality. Miles Davis mixing melodies with Mingus under an orange moon, belching purple rain haze. Heroin-baked screams blown through horns, building arcs to Venus, a continuum, a conundrum, song notes in blue and green, Crayola markers bleeding across Jim Crow land. Quincy Jones and Ray Charles be rocking the briar patch. Trickster cousins of north-south demarcation. Whatever you do, please, please, please don't throw us in the ghetto. Oya gives birth to Funkadelic on deepest, darkest Saturn at the crossing of the Nile and the Euphrates. Unseen Negro space ghosts channel Stonehenge. Secret architecture in 6/8 time. That's why the bass do what it do and it don't stop. Because the drums make us remember. Nina Simone make us remember. Sun Ra make us remember. Max Roach make us remember. Bird Train, Cool Hercules, Bessie, Lady Day, Dizzy, Wu-Tang, Tupac and them make us remember. Because we forget things like our birth. Where is that bottle of Night Train with the genie in it? Question. How do you survive in a place where your slang ain't recognized, your God is ineffective, and the streets do not know your name nor its derivatives? Answer. We solve for X. Our soul music is algebra. Geometric lines crossing Pangea. Transient, trans-African, transmutating into post modern daydreams. We are the ones we've been waiting for, the babies of June Jordan's distant stare, bearing liberation to only what our songs know. We are always waiting, turning the wait into break beats. Our waiting weighs a ton. We are forever becoming, and this poem is the music that mends our madness into memorials. The beats that notate the blueprint to our survival, our path to healing, our mothership connection to the world above and the love below. Remember who you are. Remember who you are. The next poem is called Genesis. And Genesis is an origin story on multiple levels. It's a poem about my grandmother's migration from Georgia to Cleveland. But it's also a poem about the origins of survival theology. Why Black people in this country have the relationship to the church that we do. And it's a poem about the origins of my relationship to money, to anxiety, to what it means to watch mothers navigate a world that have placed the floor under nothing. It's structured around three presidential statements: Nixon, Ford, and Carter, and three intimate truths: the political and the personal sharing a single origin, the fact that this nation ain't never accounted for what it did to us. And this poem is about what the Black's home space has to carry and what it was built to carry us through. This is Genesis 1. President Nixon, in a State of the Nation address in 1971, wrote, "Let us place a floor under the income of every family with children in America, but let us also establish an effective work incentive and an effective work requirement." When you grow up watching your mama open her cherry skin legs for men seeking baptism in her river, you learn to shut your eyes to the things in this world that are right in front of you. You learn to keep musk-scented, dimly lit secrets so quiet that you don't whisper them even to God. You learn to turn the claps of thighs ringing in your ears into snare drums. Thumping bedposts on roach-infested floorboards become kick drums, and these become the break beats that liberate you from madness until you become a man. And then you scream the secrets out alone into a mirror that has replaced Kool-Aid stained lips with a graying beard. You learn to laugh at every joke under the sun, except the ones that got anything to do with your mama, too. After 3 weeks in office, President Gerald Ford asked the nation to reflect on deficit spending. You have strange relationships with money when your mama never had none. As a child, Christmas becomes a day you look forward to. Christmas becomes a day of anxiety. Christmas becomes a day that you fear. You have moved for the third time in 2 years. Once you have been evicted. Another time your mama fell out with the girlfriend you and mama was staying with. And the third time you and mama left because that nigga y'all was staying with didn't have no job. December 25th is coming. And you wonder if there's going to be a Christmas. You hold on to dreams tighter than presidents hold on to lies. And all your dreams have dead presidents with mocking green smiles. You want to stop the presidents from smiling. You develop a strange relationship with money. It is a fever. 3. President Jimmy Carter reminds Congress that it is imperative to mind the separation between church and state. When grandma drove her black Buick from Georgia to Cleveland in 1958, she was as much running from Jim Crow as she was running to Jesus. She packed her clothes, her pistol, her atlas, 3 days worth of chicken, greens, macaroni and cheese, cornbread, and cobbler, 2 pictures of her 6-year-old daughter's married father, peach wine from the plantation she worked, and her black ass Bible. There was no one in Cleveland she knew except the congregation at St. Timothy Missionary Baptist, the sister to church to Ebenezer in Atlanta. When she arrived in Cleveland, the congregation housed her, helped her find her first job, which she kept for 33 years till she retired, helped raise her children and grandchildren, married her, saved her soul after her second husband stole it, and buried her. You Negroes are too high on religion, the cultural critic wrote. Nah. We Negroes are low on survival. We go to church because it done had our black backs since before Nat Turner taught himself to read Genesis. So we stand with origin. And this next poem is literally an origin story. It's an imagined interview with my paternal grandfather, who died 9 years before I was born. I never met him. And so he came to me. And this one is titled Interview with My Paternal Grandfather, who died 9 years before I was born. I couldn't think of nothing else, y'all. This poem is about the origins of a certain kind of black manhood, the kind that is trained to lead by being beaten, the kind that is taught to tame a beast, that's asked to hold violence in your chest and call it survival. It's also what happens when the archive is a ghost, when the origin you need has been silenced. And the poet's job in that situation is to become the archivist, to build the record from whatever is left. And in that instance, what is left is spirit. So I will play two people in this poem, myself and my grandfather. And so why Cleveland? No one would have thought to look for us there. So you didn't want to be found? Does any Negro in this country want to be? But you a Christian. Being saved and being found are not the same, boy. You didn't answer my question. You don't ask the right ones. Why did you leave Memphis in the middle of the night with your wife and two sons? What year was that? It was 1958, boy. Why do you want to know why I left? Sometimes I feel so angry that I could kill a man. I've never said that to anyone. I work so hard at taming the beast. It feels like a Wolverine dancing a whirling dervish in my soul. You sound like a preacher. I'm a poet. Same thing. My father says you taught him Robert's Rules of Order by the time he was 12 years old. Said you would quiz him on it every week, and if he gave you the wrong answers, you would beat him. Is that true? You sound like your father. How is that? Always wanting to know why, but not really wanting to know the answer. The answer is a commitment. Leaders got to be committed, boy. So you beat my father to make him a leader? Better the beating to come from my hand than for the world to beat him. The world beats us anyway. The world beats you to keep you down. When was the last time you wanted to kill a man? What was the reason? I felt like he had his foot on my neck. It was about money. Yeah, you owed him money, right? I didn't feel like I had any choice. Felt like it was going to be him or me. He was a white man, wasn't he? He is. But you didn't kill him. No, I didn't. Why? You know, my father left Cleveland because he knew he had to kill a man. He was going to kill or be killed himself. Says Cleveland is a hard place to live. Memphis was a hard place to live too. My father's in Omaha now, been there 52 years. Omaha was a hard place to live for Earl Little and his family. They had to pack up in the middle of the night and leave too. If he hadn't packed him up to leave Omaha, his son wouldn't have become Malcolm X. What did you become after you left Memphis? Your grandfather. But this isn't about me. Then what are you asking questions for, boy? This last poem, and then I promise I'll move into the Black home space because all of this is connected. But this is Poetry Month, so I would be remiss if I didn't share a fairly decent corpus of work. This last poem is called Black Saint for Billy Harper. Billy Harper is a tenor saxophonist, a giant who is little known. by many of us. And this poem is an origin story about his relationship to sound. It's about where the music comes from when you're not sure that you're the one making it, when it comes from somewhere else. It's a poem where the phrase Black home space actually first appeared in my work. I didn't know what it meant yet, but it was already there, showing me that I would spend the next several years trying to find the dynamic that lived in the name. So this is the origin of the term Black home space. This is Black Saint for Billy Harper. I feel like there's a connection to a message in the music that I'm supposed to express. I feel like I'm supposed to say something about the music to the listeners that want to hear. Horn, a voice tool, body borrowed from earth. What color do your eyes have to be to see God? Or if you close them, you can see the forever Black home space. I'm not here today. Maybe never was. I feel everything. Child breath, birth, indigo, sound, twisting, space, trees, scrape, sky, leaf songs in green root notes, spin, earth boundless. Andromedan soul body cells form somebody's collapse, multiply into Black one-room churches bombed beneath poplar trees, protecting nations, arms spread, widespread. I send the message. Can you hear? Can you hear? We song, speech, Solomon, godlust for unseen, sunning dust to dust. Rainbows escape black holes. What time is it really if you can't travel to 200 BC Pluto in style? A cell is a nation, notion, love supreme, each breath, cousin to train, squinch, eyes to hear, clear, and rest. Poet, musician are the same. Musician, human, man, same. But sometimes it seems as though the music comes from above to me. And then I write it down for you. But I am not a saint. I am not a saint. I am not a saint. All right, so those 4 poems are origin stories, but they're also doing more. What Song Do traces the sonic circuit from the sorrow songs which the enslaved built in the one material that couldn't be confiscated. All the way to Sunrise Space is the place. All the way to Parliament Funkadelics, Funkintellicy. All the way to Chicago Drill of Lil Durk naming intersections of Chicago because sovereignty lives in the act of naming when you don't have access to material wealth. Through mumble rap, where Young Thug ceases building a world for you to even understand, but a world for us to feel. All of this is our sonic circuit. Genesis traces the sanctuary circuit, the Black church as a node on the network that carried my grandmother from Georgia to Cleveland when she knew no one, the home space made institutional. Interview with my paternal grandfather traces the ancestral circuit. It's what happens when the connection between a community's past and its present identity is severed, when the origin you need has been silenced. And the poet's job is to become the archivist, to build the record from whatever is left, to recognize that the silence itself is information. And Black Saint, the last poem I read, traces the interior circuit, the artist's relationship to the sound, the forever Black home space that appears when you close your eyes, the geography that exists, whether or not the external world recognizes it. So we have a sonic circuit, we have a sanctuary circuit, we have an ancestral circuit, we have an interior circuit. All 4 are evidence of a spiritual technology that's been operating for centuries. So now that we've gone through the poems, let me name that technology directly. So as a poet who resides deep in the tradition, I always start with the folk tales. And the folktale of the greatest residence to our tradition is the story of the flying Africans, carried most powerfully in the tale, All God's Children Had Wings. Now, in that story, African slaves who had been subjected to brutal beatings at the hands of their overseers leapt into the air and flew back to Africa. They didn't escape, they transcended. They refused the terms of captivity entirely and returned, not to the ground that had been taken from them, but to the spiritual source from which they came. This is the text of our folktale tradition. It's the antecedent of what we now call tourism. And it's the purest expression of the spiritual technology at the center of everything that I'm going to share with you. The refusal to accept what has been taken defines the limits of what is possible. What the tradition holds as folktale, history records as event. So here's the event. In 1803, a group of Igbo captives having transported from West Africa were told in the middle of the voyage from Africa to America that they had been enslaved. Now, they've been told that in the middle of the journey. And so once they arrived to Dunbar Creek on St. Simon's Island in Georgia, they chose spiritual return over physical bondage. And the Gullah Geechee descendants of this place preserved the story for over 2 centuries through oral tradition. So Dunbar Creek is the source. It's the ground beneath one of the very core stories of our literary corpus. Now, as a poet, I needed to stand there. I needed to make the pilgrimage to Igbo landing, not as an outside researcher, but as somebody for whom this story isn't history, but it's inheritance. But let me tell you what I found when I arrived there. That sacred site is now a private resort home. Signs on that property read, "No trespassing," "Beware of dog," "Trump 2020." And then at the very rear of the property, mounted on the wall of a private boat dock, read, "Igbo Landing 1803." So the private owner knew that this is a sacred site and chose to privatize it anyway. Meanwhile, a mile away from the water is a plaque that memorializes the history, but it's not allowed to be recognized at the site of sacred Black resistance. So dig this. Story gets a plaque, but the ground is withheld. So this ain't a property dispute. This is archival alienation. This is the severed circuit between collective memory and the geography that holds it. So what I witnessed at Dunbar Creek was not an isolated incident, it's a system. And like all systems, it operates on multiple levels simultaneously. So I want to name them. I want to name the 3 forms of erasure that I experienced not only at Dunbar Creek, but that we experience in DC, Chicago, Philadelphia, Cleveland, everywhere where we be. Each one is a distinct information problem, and together they constitute a crisis. So I'll name them. The first is physical erasure. This is when sacred land is privatized, blocked off, fenced off. The body cannot return to the ground that holds its memory. We all know those sacred sites that we have in our neighborhoods, in our spaces where Black folks have grown and emerged that are now privatized. Second is narrative erasure. The story, if you're lucky, gets a plaque, but it don't get its rightful ground. Then the history is acknowledged just enough to neutralize its power. And third is metaphysical erasure. This is the severed circuit between spirit and the site that leaves communities archivally homeless, unable to locate themselves in the geography of their own meaning. Now, when we operate all 3 together, communities don't lose place, but they do begin to lose coordinates of the identity. And that's not social injustice merely, that's an information crisis. It's a crisis of knowledge, a crisis of memory, and the infrastructure that holds them. So archival justice is not about what we preserve. It's about where we're allowed to stand when we say it. Now I want to talk about the Black home space. What happened at Dunbar Creek in 1803 was a material horror. But what the Gullah Geechee community did with that horror, that's what I want you to hold today. And I'm gonna get out your way shortly after I name all this. They couldn't get the ground back. They couldn't undo the betrayal. They couldn't restore what had been taken, but they could build something that no deed property could contain. They took that act of collective defiance and transformed it into a story, into the tale of the flying Africans. That act of transformation, the community turning material tragedy into portable sacred power, is the Black home space in action. It's the same act I watched my grandmother perform, the same technology, different century. I therefore define the Black home space as this: a dynamic, portable, spiritual geography, the internal world-making force that emerges from the tension between the boundless realm of Black spirituality and the fractured history of Black space in America. I build on bell hooks, who named the home place as a vital site of resistance created by Black women. My grandmother's house was a quintessential home place, but when she moved from a house with a garden to a concrete patch yard, she performed the same alchemy. She just transported it. She proved the essence of home isn't in the soil, but it's in the soul of the homemaker. So the home place is a location. The home space is the portable spiritual technology that creates it and survives when the location is taken. Now, it doesn't just arrive in a vacuum. The Black home space builds on the tradition of Black interiority, the inner life of Black subjects that can't be colonized even when the body is. It asks what happens when that interiority reaches outward and makes something in the world. It's in conversation with Black geographies, with the scholarship of McKittrick and Clyde Woods and J.T. Rohn. Many of you in this room may know these names. It maps how anti-Blackness structures space, but where Black geographies names the womb, the Black home space names the technology that has always existed behind it. It's rooted in quotidian Black indigenous spiritual practice, not necessarily formal religion, but a living practice of orientation, meaning making, and survival. The Black home space sits at the intersection of all three, and it emerges when interiority meets geography, meets spirit, and refuses to be contained by any of them alone. Now, that's the theory. The practice of the Black home space in community development, a word I can't stand, but we're going to use it. Home spacing is the verb. So if the Black home space is the noun, the thing carried, home spacing is the verb. It's the practice. It's what it looks like when communities activate our inheritance together. So home spacing is an active communal practice of identifying a community's sacred inheritance, spiritual, cultural, ecological, and deploying it as evidentiary authority in community development, archivism, and philanthropic decisions. Now let me ground this, and I'm going to close here, because this is work that I'm beginning to deploy in the city of Cleveland with the help of some dear friends in multiple institutions. I want to name a neighborhood that I love. It's Buckeye. It's a stretch on Cleveland's east side. So I conducted qualitative research there, interviewing merchants, elders, youth, residents, youth serving organizations, you name it. And I found 4 severed circuits. I found the same severed circuits there that I found at Dunbar Creek, just playing out in a different register. The ancestral circuit, the sanctuary circuit, the network circuit, and the future circuit. But here's what home spacing teaches us. The lament already contains the blueprint. When a brother who has owned a corner beverage store said, "This ain't a hood," I would personally like to create a sign that says, "Welcome to downtown Buckeye." He wasn't dreaming, he was naming. He was performing a namist function without knowing that it had a name. And here's where that becomes measurable, where we take the framework and apply it in real time. Any community narrative research can be deployed as the epistemological foundation for millions of dollars in capital access to Black entrepreneurs along a Black corridor like Buckeye. So the research can name what merchants hold, and the naming makes them legible to capital that had previously passed them by. And that is a co-construction function in action. And that's home spacing. So what does this look like? It can start with a library branch. Now, in South Buckeye, Rice Branch is a Cleveland Public Library's anchor on the corridor. So in the home spacing pilot we're building, Rice Branch becomes a meaning bearer. It's the institution that holds oral histories, ecological records, merchant testimony, youth aspiration, and carries that archive into rooms where decisions about community development get made. So it asks a question: what if a public library archivist and members of the community who become archivists walk into a planning meeting for South Buckeye, not as silent recorders, but as co-constructors, as people who say, here is what the ground holds, here's what the community is named, and here is what it requires. This means the archivist isn't in a university library, not in a foundation boardroom, but at the table where capital is being deployed, holding the testimony of the people as primary evidence for what space could be. So in the tradition of the Igbo who walked into Dunbar Creek, in the tradition of the Gullah Geechee who turned that walk into a folktale, in the tradition of our grandmothers who carried home across state lines, this is home spacing made live. So I want to close, and I hope I haven't taken too much time where we begin. Origins aren't just where we come from, they're what we carry. They're the portable geography that my grandmother packed in her black Buick alongside her clothes, her pistol, and her Bible. They're the sound of my grandfather. They're the breakbeat, the blue note, the sanctuary circuit, the name still waiting for someone to put a sign on. The circuit has never been severed. It only changes frequency. So I'm going to close there because I'll probably taking too long. But please find me on LinkedIn and Substack where I write about this stuff, where I write about the home space, where I write about the work of building equitable Black information futures further. And thank you for Open Mic, Open Site for making space for poems and frameworks to sit at the same table, because that's rare. And I hope I've done you justice. Thank you.
First of all, Daniel, I am just outdone, overdone, need to lay down, because you have cleared the table with such bountiful knowledge and history and relationship building and stories. Thank you, first of all, so much for authentically pouring out what was in your body and allowing that to now transcend into our spaces. Like, I have so many questions, but we're going to settle on one for time's sake. But
Indeed.
thank you so much for sharing and bringing this home spacing concept really home, right? And to know that you're doing this work in Cleveland, I have to see it. I have to come and bear witness to it, because I believe there are spaces that would be open to this as a project, as a moment in time, especially this time. So thank you so much for sharing your methodology. This is amazing. It was such an amazing presentation, and more of that. But to the question, so you understand the relationship between memory and space, telling about the Igbo story, bringing that, to Cleveland and to that block. how do you bring others along who may feel really disconnected from history, even though that history lives in them, is part of their bloodline? How do you bring people to the table who are disenfranchised and feel like that their history is really fragmented or displaced or erased? And how do you help them to see power in their voice for civic participation?
It's a really, really good question. I want to say that something that I'm recognizing about myself is so much of my journey and my experience is rooted in Cleveland. And so, what I hope to share is that because I'm very Cleveland centric and the dynamics in Cleveland are so very unique, that you may need to apply what I'm saying to where you are.
Mm-hmm.
So, let me just name a couple of things before I answer your question. The first thing I want to name is that Cleveland is the poorest big city in these United States.
Yeah.
Uh, and the east side of Cleveland in particular is a very challenging space in many respects. And I should also name that being a person that works with youth, I understand that the violence in Cleveland, particularly, Cleveland is one of the fifth most violent cities in the United States. So they deal with the violence. They deal with a very fractured and very unequal education system.
Mm-hmm.
And they deal in the city, on the east side in particular, they deal with a lot of poverty. So I just want to name that first. So what's super important to understand is that because of those dynamics and other dynamics that I won't name here, what becomes super important is to work with youth and to try to connect youth with seniors. And part of what that means is inviting youth and seniors to work together to identify the spaces that are sacred to them. So youth have an idea of what sacred space means, and we have to redefine what sacred means. Sacred means this place is indispensable. Mm-hmm. Like this cannot go. And for these reasons that are deep. And oftentimes they have to do with history, and sometimes they have to do with loss. Sometimes they have to do with opportunity that has happened for them. But what are your sacred spaces? And the youth share that with the seniors. And the seniors have a different idea of what sacred space is. And they share what is sacred, what spaces are sacred to them, and for what reasons those are. And so when they come together, they begin to have a new understanding of what sacred means, a new understanding of what sacred space means, and new ways of thinking about how to place themselves within the context of archival history. Mm-hmm. And they do that together. Doing it in isolation, in silo, doesn't do it. I have found that in many instances, many circles that I've had, even more than race, the largest disconnect that we have is between the generations. And so by bringing them together to make meaning together, we begin to land in history and land in spirit in very different ways. So I hope that this has answered your question. I know it's a long way to get there, but I have to also name where I come from and how I'm informed by this work.
Yeah, and I think that that's important. Skipping steps doesn't help us to root solutions, right? Like sustainable ones. We have to go through it so that we can grow through it, right? And skipping the steps, not identifying the challenges, thinking that we can ignore all of the sector and all of those spaces that you've identified as influential, as holders of space and memory. Like when we exclude people from the equation, you're not going to ever get the right answer. And so thinking about that intergenerational work, I think, is super important and may hold solution for other things, right? Like we talk about it, but I don't know that we have demonstrated it, and this feels real. And the return to understanding the definition of what's sacred and sacred spaces feels really enlightening and feels like such a conversation point, right?
And
Like,
so,
because in itself, between my 17-year-old and me, we're going to have very different answers. And then what's the middle ground? And then what's the appreciation? Because conversation helped us to affirm and honor
that's
what
right.
we believe is sacred,
That's right.
right?
That's
And I love that, just as an exchange. But we got to get out of here, Daniel. I'm gonna have to have you back. We just gonna have to figure out how we do part two of this or something. We got to figure out. So I just want to thank you again for sharing your work, your practice, and your presence with us tonight. There was something, and is something, really powerful about the way you hold memory, space, story, poetry, and invite us to think differently about where we come from and what we carry forward. I know that I'm leaving this space with so much that I'm going to be sitting with. I can't wait to get off of this live so I can call 17 people and be like, let me ask you something. What's your sacred space?
What is your sacred? Yes. Yes.
Let's talk about that.
Let's
And
talk
I
about
imagine others that are still with us here too are feeling the same way. So thank you, thank you, thank you. We'll make sure that in the episode we will link your LinkedIn as well as your Substack, and we encourage folks who are tuned in to connect and follow Daniel for sure. Thank you again, Daniel. And for everyone else that's here, if you want to stay connected with me or with the collaborative community, we're on LinkedIn and on YouTube. You can always hit us up at collaborativecommunity.org, and collaborative is spelled CollabARTive community.org, collaborativecommunity.org, where art is the heart of our work. And you can find out more details about our work and explore all of the themes for the season. And maybe you yourself who are tuned in, or somebody that may be a good artists to spotlight and highlight on this here show, Open Mic, Open Site. So our next episode is going to be on Wednesday, May 27th, 6 p.m. Central Time. That's where you always find us, the last Wednesday of the month, unless otherwise indicated. Our theme for next month is signals and noise. Creative work that's inspired by either communication or messages, technology or miscommunication, and all of the ways that we try to be heard. So if that resonates with you or may resonate with someone that you know, we would love to connect. Please reach out if you're interested in being featured. And again, we want to thank Daniel for such an amazing presentation, such a heartfelt presentation. I learned so much, and I hope that you did too. And with that, we are going to get on out of here. We want everyone to stay safe, take time, take breath, as Daniel started his section and presentation off with. This here has been our first episode of season 2 of Open Mic, Open Site, part of the collaborative community. And special thanks to my super producer, Jordan, who keeps all the things running smoothly in the background. So until next time, take good care of yourselves, take care of each other, and stay connected to your origins. Have a good night.